Alright guys, so this video has two purposes. The first thing I want to do is I want to show you guys how to hollow tie on a hard monofilament extension, which is going to lead into a discussion. And hopefully it kind of makes it obvious why I think the dubbing brush method that I'm going to unveil and that we're working towards is so cool, right? So the discussion should hopefully make that pretty obvious. The second thing I want to do is show you a unique rigging called the mono loop rig, so that you can connect a single strand of hard monofilament to a Swimbait rig to make weedless beast flies on a round piece of mono for hollow tying and dubbing brush work. So that's going to be the two themes of the video. Let's dive in and check it out. This is a mono looped rig, squimpish dubbing brush, squimpish bucktail composite brush, weedless Swimbait fly. How sick is that? It's sick. That's the kind of stuff you're going to be able to tie. So coming into a hollow fly, I already have a thread base, I already have my markings. This one has a mono loop on it. You can see the mono loop right there. It's very small, it's just big enough to thread over the hook eye, so that we can do a hollow fly on this guy and put it on a weedless hook. My bobbin has 6/1000 of an inch Danville fine monofilament thread. I already have 2 wraps around my bobbin leg to increase the friction so we can start tying. And per usual, I'm gonna tie this left-handed because that's just how my brain works on these extended bodies. So I got some AA grade Primo tail for musky full fly fishing. I'm going to choose hair from the same spot, the sweet spot on the bucktail. We're going to get our spacing and taper through the staging between the stacks. First stack on most hollow flies is going to be a straight bucktail tie in the round, which I'm going to skip over. Then we'll get into hollow tying. So something I haven't showed yet, but usually once I get that first stack in there, I'll just come in and cut that mono nice and short. Once you don't really need it for handling after that, you're all set. So this is how you hollow tie on the hard monofilament. And something that should be hopefully obvious is that, like, your bucktail deceiver technique is really the same. It's identical, and really a hollow tie technique is the same as well. It's the same that you would do on any sort of hook shank, trailer shank, tube fly, doesn't matter. You're going to come in, you're going to take off all the short hairs. The short hairs aren't going to benefit anything. I'm just going to clean up the butts. This is not trying to shorten the hair or introduce taper. I'm just trying to make sure that I just have a clean edge to tie in. That's all I'm doing there. Make sure that glue's dry so you don't glue your fingers. Put that on backwards. Giovanni pinch to control all that slack. Pull it right down. Controlling wrap so you can manipulate it. Thumbnail right on top. You really got to be aggressive to get it evenly distributed all the way around that mono. And this is why we're doing the mono loop rig. This is why this rigging is important, because I want a round single piece of hard monofilament, not 2 strands, because 2 strands make the rectangular base, which is crazy cool for manipulating the silhouette of the bucktail to get it flat or high and tight. But in this situation, I'm trying to get round bucktail tied in the round, and I want to use the least amount of bucktail possible in a low diameter single strand round piece of mono is going to allow me to do that. So then how do you connect that to the Swimbait rig? That's why the mono loop is cool. So just a single piece here. It's about 50 pound. I think it's the 50 pound Perlon hard monofilament. Once it's evenly distributed, switch hands. My left hand now becomes a vise. Cinch that down. Hard pressure wraps. You can just use normal fly tying pressure right here, right against my fingers. The 50 pound will let you do that. You can also just whip it around as well, but that'll just give you a little bit more control and make sure it's really lashed down to that mono. Like, tie hard. The first few times you do this, your fingers should be sore. You have to build up the dexterity to be able to do this. Now I'm going to come up. I don't always use tools because I want to try to make this as accessible as possible, but these proto-yawns are just fantastic for being able to control and reverse flare. So this is one of the tools that I sell. I think it's the simplest and the best on the market. And you just use that to bring the hair backwards. Take a few seconds to get good control over that. Push down right at the base. Make sure you can control that. Now, if you guys recall, I'm currently doing this backwards. I'm doing this as a left-handed tire, and truly I am. It becomes a little bit awkward for me here, but I'm going to use my left hand on the bobbin, bring that thread up and clean just like you would on your hollow tie, get it on the mono. I'm going to take 4 wraps forward, 4 wraps back, creating that Chinese finger trap that we covered in the thread control video so that the high pressure wraps over the butts are locked in place. Then you're going to draw out thread, and you're going to build up your thread ball. Keep it all kind of right in one spot, right in front of that bucktail stack. Now you can come, pull out thread, so you can tie with less pressure than you normally would, flare that hair up, get an idea for how big it's going to be, tie with lighter than your bobbin pressure wraps, control that hair back, walk it back to the angle that you want, fitting for a proper hollow fly, come back down onto your base, and then progress forward. Now, per our hollow tie video, I'm going to follow that procedure. I'm going to keep the spacing the same. I'm going to use the same hair to get the same length and the same characteristics on the tail. We're going to get our taper by this 1/2 inch spacing as I progress up, and I'm going to open the flare up slightly more and more per each stack to create the desired silhouette. Hollow fly. All right, so like 40 minutes later, like at least, and I didn't even put flash in it, I have my extended body hollow fly, which is a beast, right? This is Bob Popovics beast. This would be a tail section, and I didn't even put flash in it. Like, it would have taken me probably another 5 or 10 minutes if I would have done flash every other joint, just because it's one other step that you got to do and taper and move around and get in there. This is just bucktail. So like when I was learning to do this, I mean, these would take me an hour, hour and a half, and then it would take me another 30 minutes to finish the front of the fly at least. I mean, you're talking 2-hour builds, 2.5-hour builds, and I was very comfortable with bucktail and hollow tying and thread, like all of it. Very comfortable with all of it, and being able to consistently produce, say, shanked beast and hollow flies and stiff shank rigs and tube flies, but taking it to the mono took it to a whole nother extreme, a whole nother level of dexterity. And I'm not trying to say that to dissuade anybody from doing this, because I think if you learn how to do this, you will be twice the tire that you are right now. Like just the skill level involved in being able to produce this and produce this consistently is going to be rare. I mean, you're going to earn every inch of this, every single one. You're going to earn it. But this is what I think makes the dubbing brush version so cool, in that the skill isn't here. The skill is on the dubbing brush table. And that skill is so much easier to refine and get good at quickly and make consistent brushes. And as long as you can make a consistent dubbing brush, then the winding it on, I mean, it would have taken me 7 minutes to wind a bucktail dubbing brush on here and get nearly identical results. Ultra consistent all the way in the round, same density, same flare angles for the most part. I mean, you can make something that is nearly the same in less than 10 minutes. And it's a tedious 10 minutes, don't get me wrong. It's very tedious. But this is also very tedious and unbelievably time consuming, and takes a whole nother level of skill set that I think that if somebody wasn't ultra comfortable and ultra familiar with all of this, they would just leave it behind. They say, that's too intense, it's not for me, I don't want to try that. I'm just going to stay with what I know. But I think the dubbing brush takes it to a level, and it's going to help bridge the gap to get people into extended body mono tying that normally people wouldn't have attempted, because it's trickier than all get out. So that is the coolest thing ever, right? That's Bob Popovics Beast Fly. Now this has a mono loop in it, and I can feel it. If I run my fingers down, I can feel it. So I can take my 6/0 PR378, I can drop it in my lap, I can find my mono loop, thread that sucker, and now I can lash this down and have a weedless beast fly just like that. So what you're gonna need a raw mono straight. Again, you can make these yourself or you can buy them. The name is Perlon Hard Monofilament Leader material. This is either 50 or 60. You're also gonna want some fairly stout but manageable monofilament to make the loop. You don't want it to be so light that it breaks, right? It is gonna be under some stress in that system where it's gonna be sliding up and down on that rig every time it gets hit. It's not gonna be crazy. Like, you don't need to come in here with, you know, the same diameter that you're using for the monostraight, but I'm going to use 40-pound saltwater Rio Mono. Seems to work just fine. So you're going to come and you're going to put down your thread base per normal. Again, 2 wraps around my bobbin ear. Going to get my thread started by hand, pull out a little bit, and then start going to crazy town. That's going to be fine. That's going to be the total length of my monostraight. So far I've put a thread base down from start to the end, and I'm going to start working my way back up, and I'm going to go past where that hook bend would be if I were to bridge that gap. And I'll show you why. It's just so you can consistently set the length here. I'm about a 1/2 inch inside my gap here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a section. Can even use my vise here to just hold that for a sec. I'm going to take a section of 40 pound. Doesn't need to be huge, just like 2 or 3 inches. And I'm going to fold it over and I'm going to make a loop. So I just doubled it back and I just have this big loose loop. I know you can't really see that maybe against my gray shirt, but just a big loose loop. Now I knew that I had to go back about a 1/2 inch, so I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to make my bobbin much tighter because I only want maybe 3 or 4 whatever turns around that mono, so it'll still slip. So that's very loosely tied in, and it's a huge loop, right? I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to measure this off, and so if that loop was pulled tight, that'd be golden, right? If that loop was pulled tight, I can adjust it. I can make it just a little bit shorter. I can tug on both of those. Perfect. I'm going to call that perfect. Now I'm going to take this loop and I'm going to tie up to it and make the loop fairly small, just so it's like the diameter of my hook. It should be able to get over the barb too, but you get what I'm saying. You're going to take that and you're going to skinny up that loop section. You want to put quite a lot of turns right where that loop is formed, so that's going to be really durable, and I'm just going to check that, make sure it's going to slide over that. Yep, that's like the perfect size. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's very small. Maybe put something up against it so you can see. It's very, very small right on top. And now I'm going to finish my thread base going back. When I get to where it's tied in, I'm just going to cut these mono ends flush right at the same time. So I only have maybe an inch section. You're only going to have a tie or two. That's going to be on that double thick section of mono. So there's my thread base, there's my mono loop. Now in the dubbing brush versions, I don't mark them because I just kind of gauge and I know exactly how much room the dubbing brush is going to take up. It's usually like a 4-inch extension, maybe 4.5, but they're almost all the same, so I don't mark it. But here you're going to take that mono loop, just like we did with the split rig where we had that small naked section. You're going to put that directly between 2 dots on your 1/2-inch spacing on your piece of paper, and you're going to mark that all the way through so that you have your reference points to tie your extended body. So there's my mono loop rig. I'm going to hit this with super glue here in a second. But you can see I have 1 stack right before the loop. These are going to be my tail stacks. I might take my thread base just a little bit past this when I start it and start tying in hand so I can add that 3rd stack. So I'll have 1, 2, 3 behind the PR378 bend. 1 stack right in front of the mono loop. This is what's going to connect it to your chassis. And then 1, 2, 3 that are going to fill the inside of the gap. And just for reference, I know not to tie this last one because it's going to be right in the way. So I might get these 2 closer. So you just make reference notes. There's no right or wrong or recipe. Like instead of staying with the 1/2-inch spacing for the whole gap, put one right before it and then one right after it, and you'll fill that space perfectly. And then you're not going to have one that you're trying to tie down right here at the bend that's going to be in the way. So just make mental notes, and it's not that hard to hold up a hook for reference, right? So that is the mono loop rig. Once that's on, you're going to want to put a thread base right here, or one of those, I forget, Owner UV soft glow beads. I think size 3 is the size I use most often. And so that's what you're going to use to rig that. So that right there is your finished product. That is a mono loop rigged beast fly, weedless beast on the PR378 with a fully supported kinetic chain there for the rigging. And I mean, that took me like an hour and a half to tie this fly. Very technical. You can see some of the hollow ties are slightly more open than I want. That's why I can't stop touching it. I'm trying to get it exactly the way I want. But it's a very technical thing. And that was like the fastest beast I've ever tied probably. And it still took an hour and a half. And you should, I mean, these are different materials. And so they shouldn't, I mean, they don't look exactly the same, but this Squimpish beast on the same 6/0, I mean, this took me like 30 minutes, maybe. And I had to make 2 brushes just because I wanted to. And I mean, that's like 2 brushes on top of winding it on the mono, on top of making the mono loop break, on top of finishing and dressing the hook. And it's like perfect. And it's got color fades and multiple tones and different lengths, and it's got flash boo pre-blended in it. It's like 30 minutes maybe, and it's like the exact same result as this massive hollow fly that took way longer and is way more technical. And this came out sweet, and this will fish beautifully, but that's why I'm excited. I mean, this is something that would be a bear to try to tackle coming into this, whereas this is no problem, lickety split. So thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one.